Olaf Haspener. I work as a Senior Success Manager at TYPO3, and today I'm going to be your host. As you can see, we are not in our usual Düsseldorf office setting, but we are at PIA UDG in Mainz, in the beautiful office. Thanks for having us over. So today my guest is going to be Mathias Reinhardt. He is going to talk about the new Good Home concept. He is Managing Director at UDG, and I'm really happy to have you here today. Good afternoon, Mathias. How are you feeling?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for joining us here in Mainz, and thanks for having this little conversation on TYPO3.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Thanks for inviting us over. So maybe do you want to start out with a little introduction of yourself?
Yeah, I'm Mathias. I'm one of the managing directors at PIA UDG, which is basically a digital agency. We'll explain that later. And I've been an agency guy forever, so I do this for close to now a quarter of a century, in October actually. So I founded one of those early digital agencies in Germany. And nowadays I'm responsible for the PIA UDG brand, which is a customer experience agency. Half of my time I work on client projects, on steering, on giving guidance to clients on digitization. And I also work on evolving agencies in general. That's part of my role.
Exciting. We're going to get into that a little bit more later on. So maybe would you like to start out and tell us a little bit about PIA UDG? What is PIA UDG doing? What's the construct like?
Yeah. Basically, we help customers to build outstanding customer experience. So clients come to us if they need support in building, planning, creating their digital touchpoints and the customer journeys that go over that digital touchpoints. We help them to integrate those digital touchpoints, and that from a user experience perspective. We help them with the marketing technology behind that. We help them with the content and the processes to create and distribute the content, and all of that data-driven, agile, of course, and scaling to a global, international project level.
And we've talked a little bit off camera before. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how the structure of PIA UDG is like? How many agencies do belong to it? What's the structure like?
Yeah, basically PIA UDG is the customer experience part, and it's one entity within the PIA. PIA is one of those large independent agency groups in Germany, and basically PIA UDG is the customer experience brand. We also have two other segments, so in total it's approximately 1,000 people. And we have two other segments. The other one is media, so we help clients to, if we build those platforms, we help them to do the traffic acquisition, get users to that platform with media and search engine advertising, paid social, etc. That's one segment. We also have a segment that actually does build marketing software technologies like Econdar or Dymetrics, the Dyna campaign tool. They belong to PIA as well. And PIA UDG is more about like consulting, doing those projects, mostly projects or digital programs over several years for large German corporation, large German brands.
And we've also talked a little bit about locations before. Do you want to tell our audience what your locations are like?
Yeah, we are all across Germany. So large offices are in Hamburg, which is also the headquarters of PIA. We are here in Mainz in the Rhine-Main area. And we have two offices in Stuttgart and Ludwigsburg in the south of Germany. People are distributed around these offices, but also other PIA locations like in Munich. We have locations in Karlsruhe. We do have international locations in Barcelona, where we scale up a lot of consultants also for the PIA UDG part. We have offices in Bucharest, in Romania, and in Belgrade and Serbia. So basically people there work for the projects here in Germany.
So pretty diverse and pretty international.
Pretty diverse,
right?
pretty growing, pretty evolving in terms of like building cool services for our clients. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so PIA UDG is a pretty big agency construct, if you can say it like that. What are the pros and cons of being such a big agency?
Yeah, basically, I mean, of course, there are pros and cons, and I strongly believe that there is room for small boutique agencies. We also see the large vendors, like the IT companies and consultancies, who actually buy agencies as well to integrate them into their international service portfolios. And we as PIA, and there are other agencies as well, we are, on one hand, we have some certain size to actually attack projects of a certain volume. And on the other hand, we can still act independently in the market, being maybe a mix of both worlds. And that's fun.
Okay, and you already mentioned a couple of your main topics at
Yeah.
PIA. What, if you had to boil it down to 3 or 5 main topics, what would those be?
Yeah, main topics, if clients come to us, they basically say, okay, we have an issue with one of our digital touch points, so we might need a relaunch, or we have to do a commerce strategy, for example, change our commerce strategy from B2B to direct to consumer, stuff like that. That would be one example. Since the pandemic, I would say most clients come to us and say, look, we have a number of digital touch points, and they are quite good or not, but they don't work in a seamless customer journey. So most of our new clients come to us and ask us to optimize the digital journeys across all touch points, also going into the offline business, point of sale, stuff like that.
Interesting evolution over the pandemic,
Yeah.
because I feel like a lot of people went online and then had online channels when they were offline before, and now it's your task to bring them together and work seamlessly.
And actually the pandemic, from that point of view, it was like a driver for making clients understand that it's actually
The relevance.
now, it's vital now to integrate sales, marketing, to work closely together, and basically because the classical offline channels and sales strategies didn't work anymore.
Yeah, they went, just disappeared. So maybe switching the focus a little bit. So we are from TYPO3, obviously. So maybe what's your story with TYPO3? How did you get into it?
Yeah, actually that goes back over 2 decades. So when I go back, I founded one of the predecessor agencies of PIA UDG. So that was PIA UDG was combined from several agencies in 2011. But we have been working with TYPO3, I think, since 2005, 2003, something like that.
So which version was your first version?
It was actually version 3, I think. Going back, like in terms of that was one of the first large open source CMS we dipped into. And it's been there ever since. I mean, that goes back to the time when I still was allowed to write code for production. I don't do that anymore. But ever since, we have used TYPO3 as one CMS. We also work with other technologies for building content experience, doing content management platforms, doing websites for our clients. So it's quite a way back. And then we started to get more and more involved into the community. I think since maybe 2010, we are a member of the TYPO3 Association, and sometimes we are more actively involved, sometimes more passive as just a member, supporting code sprints, supporting events, etc.
So maybe if you would like to name a few, how and why does PIA UDG believe in open source, and specifically in TYPO3 as a community?
As I mentioned earlier, we have a number of technologies in this content and commerce space, or as we now call them, like digital experience and commerce platforms. So we work with closed source vendors, the big US systems, the integrated marketing suites. We work with some of the smaller ones like headless systems, modular systems, etc. And TYPO3 is probably the most important one regarding open source and being community driven. So we have a broad perspective. We don't only work with TYPO3, and we think it's a good option for some scenarios. So sometimes clients ask us to evaluate technology platforms, and then TYPO3 might be a choice. But we have large teams implementing TYPO3 for clients and doing programs over several years using TYPO3 as a strategic technology.
You already mentioned it slightly. How, now looking at the market, what do you think TYPO3's role in the market is like currently? Do customers specifically ask for it, or is it more of like I want to go online, or I want to build my online channels? Which technology would you prefer or suggest?
Yeah.
Which way?
To describe the typical situations, so some clients come to us and say, okay, look, we have a relaunch, or we are looking for a new consultancy, a new provider, and TYPO3 is already set as the technology. So then we come in and actually bring in our TYPO3 teams directly. And with others, we actually look at what are the options, and then we sometimes do like a track phase where we actually evaluate technologies. From a market perspective, I think there's an obvious choice in some scenarios. TYPO3 has a very structured system. You can extend it very easily. And if clients understand open source technologies, they get good value for money. Some clients actually don't understand the mechanics behind the market, and sometimes it's just like choosing the tool that is open source and does not occur any license fees, which is not the full evaluation and not the full investment into the technology, of course. So that's our part to also explain them that they have to invest in the community, help us with extending the system, maybe in difference to the commercial vendors. And we see it as many clients come to us. We see them in machinery, B2B, our typical scenarios where we think it's a very good fitting system. We integrate it a lot with technologies like shopware and other commerce technologies, so that would be a common setup. Of course, we see some issues, TYPO3 in comparison to like the large integrated vendors regarding personalization, stuff like that. That's something we have to build into the solution. So it always depends a little bit. And that's for the private sectors. We also see the public sector, and I think we'll talk about that in a minute a bit, that we see a lot of momentum in the public sector market. So for them, it's an obvious choice over the next years.
So you would say if the customer already knows a little bit about TYPO3 and the system, or has used it for years, it's easier to keep him at TYPO3. And besides that, if the choice is pretty much open, did you have any problems selling TYPO3 in the past to those customers, or are they just open for your suggestions?
We do a classic evaluation process, and that includes test driving the solution, comparing it to others. In the end, it's a decision by the customers.
Yeah,
and you might have more than one strategic choice. That always depends a little bit. But in the end, we think there's a future, and it's of course driven by the public sector as well, because they're going to invest more and more into TYPO3. And maybe one remark. For many of our clients, we work over time spans of 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. Many of our largest clients go with us over a decade. So we have seen them changing those technologies, and they might have been moving away from TYPO3 to another technology. And 3 years later, we move them again. So they stick with us as an agency, but change their underlying technology. So
that's a good sign from the customers. We've seen customers
moving away from TYPO3 to one of the large vendors. And of course, it's not only about the functionality, but it's, as you know, if you like introduce those complex platforms, it's about like the communication, change management, or the processes, or the organizational impact. And sometimes after a certain time span, they go back to TYPO3. We have seen that as well.
It's also really interesting to know. I've not heard that take for a hot minute, but good to know. So you mentioned customers. Maybe do we want to switch to talking a little bit about what your customer base looks like? Who do you work for? What are some names you would like to throw out here?
Yeah, the typical clients, so we have certain industries where we are strong and that are our sweet spots. So we are very much into the automotive market and mobility. We are very much into industrial goods, B2B companies, and we are into pharma, healthcare, and medtech. And our typical customer would be either a large German corporation, international level, or the famous German Mittelstand, and I would say the upper Mittelstand. So typically companies doing on top of 500 million or a few billion in revenues, and that act internationally. And however, we would tackle to German-based headquarters and help them to actually distribute and deliver the solutions internationally. That's our sweet spot. So we can talk about those industries. And some brands we can mention are Porsche and Bosch, which are our biggest clients, but also other cool brands like Fendt, agricultural equipment, very cool. Ratio Farm would be an example. So well-known brands. We also work, for example, for Vaillant, which is right now in the discussions regarding heat pumps and all the energy issues.
That's also really interesting. Yeah. So if you would have to boil it down to 1 or 2 feature sets looking at your current customer base, what do you think the selling features for TYPO3 are for those circumstances?
Basically, is how they can manage international content structures. So, of course, if you look at a typical project, you would have a multi-brand sometimes, or always a multi-market setup. And we typically sell TYPO3 as part of we call it a digital factory. So the processes and the platforms to actually be capable to launch websites for a given market or region, for a certain product or product range in really no time. So we always go behind the scenes and say, okay, look, you don't talk about one homepage relaunch or whatever. But we are talking about like using TYPO3 as part of an infrastructure, often combined with the commerce technology, to actually manage dozens or sometimes hundreds of website activities. And we think it's regarding the content structures, it's one of the typical content management systems you can use. Of course, there's a large footprint in Germany, a lot of experience also with marketeers at the various brands who have experience with TYPO3 and can actually assess what the tool is good for. And maybe there might be a situation where it's not the best choice, but that always depends. Yeah.
And looking at if those are really, really big installations with multiple brands in their multi-tree setup, for mostly, I think. How does it look like performance-wise? Did you ever experience any issues looking at like 100 installations within one?
I think that's part of our engineering services, actually to ensure that you have the infrastructure, also the content delivery network, the right caching approach, etc. So sometimes we are called in to help if there are performance issues, but so far we can say that if you know how to run the technology, it's not an issue. But I think that's true for many technologies, that you have to know how to hit the right buttons. Yeah.
And you mentioned it before, the public sector. What would you personally rate the importance of TYPO3, especially in the public sector in the next couple of years, and which role might agency play in that market?
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting about PIA UDG is that we haven't been active in the public sector for several years. So there have been some activities like in the early 2000s, and we just came back to the public sector. So like 2 years ago, we said, okay, let's change our strategy, move from our typical industries and add the public sector as well. And we have been quite successful. So we might name one client. We actually tackle energy providers, healthcare providers, healthcare insurance, public healthcare insurance. And we also won the federal state Rheinland-Pfalz, and are now the TYPO3 agency running all those TYPO3 websites together with their IT organization. So we are now like back into the public sector, and of course everybody knows there's a lot of potential in terms of what we have to do there digitization-wise, in terms of services for us as citizens. So there's a lot of work to do. And obviously, if you look at those public sector technologies, they are somewhat reluctant to, of course, use US technologies, etc. So we not only see TYPO3, but also analytics tools like Matomo, etc. in that space. And that's going to grow, and as you know, and I think that's published in other channels as well, TYPO3 is now the new choice for the government site builder, which has moved from another CMS to TYPO3. It's going to be available in the next months, and that will put a lot of momentum on TYPO3 in the public sector for all especially federal and also local public entities.
And if I might ask, what caused the change for PIA UDG to go back into the public sector?
The story behind that is, so from a sales perspective, it somehow works different. You have those public tenders, you have a lot of formal requirements. And the choice was just a strategic one because with the pandemic, it was actually just shortly before the war in the Ukraine started, but with looking at the pandemic and how supply chain of our other customers got disrupted, we said it might be a good idea to balance that portfolio and add another industry or sector with maybe different mechanics. We also said there's a lot of work to do, so we can apply many of those concepts we do for leading brands on a global scale in regard of user experience, how things have to work, so it's really easy to use. We thought it might be a good idea to bring
Focus
that knowledge to public sector clients, because of course we're all citizens and using those services and see what work is to be done, or has to be done.
Okay, maybe leading over into the next part of our interview, we've thrown the term "you good home" into the communication a couple of times. I think we could get into introducing what that means. So Matthias, what do you think, or what did you think about when you came up with the term "you good home"?
Yeah, we have been looking at how to grow our TYPO3 teams, and that's true for the public sector, but for other clients as well. So there's more and more demand. And in the past, we have been successful like in integrating small teams or small agencies, and we just wanted to discuss that with the momentum in front of us regarding Typo 3 in the public sector, how the medium and smaller agencies could collaborate. And the one idea is like to form teams. And if you look a little bit at the agency sector, we know about many agencies like thinking about maybe the founders moving on and saying after a few years, I want to do something different, maybe even change on the client side, whatever. And they have small teams. And in the past, they've asked us, what can we do about the team? We have good developers, quality people, content people. What would be a good place for them to go as a team? And that could be PIA UDG or another agency. I mean, the large vendors are looking at the market as well. And we think we might have a good choice, like either to bring in partners, subcontractors in larger scenarios, or even be a good place for agencies. And for example, if the founders don't want to leave, we have seen small teams, maybe 10, 20 people. They don't scale anymore. But sometimes, like if the managing teams, the founders are looking for an opportunity to have a different career path in a maybe bigger organization, maybe have the chance to like change the client or work in different industries, that might be an option as well for teams joining.
So if you would have to paint the picture for an agency who's looking forward to trying to step into a new path, how do you think agency collaboration or handing over their agency into your agency, for example, could look like? What will those paths be like?
Basically, let's talk. Yeah. So, and of course, we can bring in a lot of experience. I think there are different scenarios. There's also a scenario of collaborating on those projects. If you look at the public sector tenders, we will see, it's already true today, but in the future we'll see larger and larger tenders focused on Typo 3. That's at least what we believe. And another option is also like in the public sector, you have the chance like to form actually teams from different vendors bidding in a tender together. That might be a good option to collaborate, maybe get to understand each other, and then move forward from there, see what might be a good idea to integrate.
And besides all of that, besides the tenders, why do you think agencies could actually benefit from reaching out to other agencies for specific questions or just for outreach in general?
Yeah.
What are your
I think it's generally, and over the last years, I think that the competition between agencies is not that we have to fight for each client. And why is that? Because there's so much work to do. And we are in many setups where we actually collaborate with other agencies, either like increasing the manpower being available for the projects, which like have time frames of 2, 3, 4 years. And the other one is also being specialized. So of course, there are services we basically understand and we could orchestrate them, but as PIA UDG, we actually can't fulfill all of them. So we integrate partners like every day on special tasks, or we form alliances. And I think, especially in the Typo 3 ecosystem, with very much information flowing back and forth between different agencies, contributors to the system, that might be an approach that works for that kind of technology very well.
So do you think there's still room for improvement in terms of collaboration between agencies in the Typo 3 world right now?
Yeah, we are looking forward to the new momentum in the Typo 3 GmbH, and you are bringing into the agency market and trying to get agency not only talking about the technology, but also about how we can apply this technology business-wise in more and more critical environments. So we're actually looking forward to more momentum, and I think an announcement like saying, okay, Typo 3 is a recommended choice for the public sector will bring a lot of momentum into the ecosystems, even new agencies, new vendors, but it's also a great chance for all the people and agency who have been sticking with Typo 3 for decades as their system of technology of choice.
Okay, so you already said, let's talk. What role do you think, or what role does PIA UDG want to play in the current setup or in the future setup of the Typo 3 ecosystem? Do you have any set plans for that?
Yeah, if you look at our client base, and we haven't talked about this in detail, but to emphasize on this, some of our really important and well-known brands rely on Typo 3 as the backend ETC for CMS. But around this, there's so many other services. Of course, it's not just the technology, the development. It's also like being the full architecture of the digital marketing stack is the content. We also look a lot into content processes, etc. So it's not specifically TYPO3 knowledge you need, but also like know-how about content processes. It's about rollouts. It's about service and maintaining those solutions for, like, if you look at a large corporation with many TYPO3 editors in various regions of the world. So that brings a lot of momentum, and we see ourselves as one of the players who actually use TYPO3 in those large scenarios.
So you're pretty much open for anyone who would like to reach out and bid maybe together for future tenders.
Definitely. Yeah.
That's good to know.
And let's form those networks, and let's get into talk whatever might be the collaboration model on those.
So if someone wants to collaborate with you, it would be the right way to reach out to you personally?
Reach out via LinkedIn or email, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are your goals concerning TYPO3 development in general? I've heard that you're looking forward to building an entire new team here at PIA UDG.
Yeah,
Do you maybe have some insights for the listeners? Yeah,
we have around 40 people like being centered around TYPO3 based projects. So that's not only developers, but also everything else involved, project managers, consultants, content specialists, quality managers. But we see the momentum. We also have a number of long-term projects involving TYPO3. So we are right now like increasing our team size.
Staffing for future projects.
And at some point we are going to that's an organizational issues. We have an agile organizational models, so-called clusters, kind of a circle-based organizational model, and then it's obvious to at some point like split those cells into several. Yeah.
So I would say let's get down to business. If I would be a developer and I would like to work at PIA UDG, what are the benefits of working here?
Yeah. Join us, get in touch with our TYPO3 specialists. We have a core developer here on the team with Anya. We have many colleagues working with TYPO3 for years, some of them being generalists in the technology, some of them being specialists, and we can offer everything. I don't want to go into like the typical issues like a hybrid work, a cool team, international team, etc. We got all the benefits, but in the end, look at the teams, get in touch with the colleagues. So if you apply here, you will get in touch with the team you're actually working with, and have a look at what we do with the technologies. I think we have many cool brands, and many people come here to work for those brands because there's so much fun in like helping them shaping their digital transformation in sales and marketing.
And the coffee's pretty good, I have to say that as well.
Thanks.
So let's get back to the new good home strategy per se. It's a nice term, it's a marketing term for sure. What's your definite goal with the establishment of the entire new good home storyline?
Yeah, in the end, to grow, and as I said, the agency market as a total like is growing. There's more and more demand, and we want to ensure that one of those medium-sized agency groups in Germany for German corporations, that we have the right talent on board, that we get more capable, etc. And I think collaborating on this and also maybe integrating agencies is the way to go. I mean, UDG was one of the first agencies starting that in 2011, but in the end, that's the same we see in the market. There's kind of consolidation, bigger groups forming to attack more sophisticated, more complex projects.
And if I'm a developer and I want to meet your team, where could I do that? Any future events?
Get in touch, or we are in Karlsruhe now at the developer days. There will be colleagues from our team, so just get in touch and talk to them on site. But you can also apply here digitally and get in touch with the team. There's going to be the TYPO3 conference, etc. So the teams from PIA UDG as well, so we can get in touch and talk to the colleagues.
So, if you haven't got your ticket to the TYPO3 Developer Days yet, you can visit t3dd23.typo3.com and get your ticket now. You can find PIA UDG in the entrance hall with their booth and mixed throughout the attendees. And lastly, I would say that concludes episode 2. Thank you, Matthias, for inviting us over. It was really lovely talking to you. Any last words? Yeah, thank you very much. And we're looking forward to do cool stuff with TYPO3. So, looking forward to it.